God, we thank you for the ways you gather us in and the ways that you call us to go out and to be stewards of your creation. We thank you for the ways you have created us to be a part of that creation, to be in partnership, and to find new ways to show your love with all. Guide this conversation this day. Help us to think about new ways to bring change. In your name we pray. Amen. I'm going to pass around a clipboard, which I think many of you have already signed up for, but we do have a creation care ministry, which I'm going to talk more about today. If you're interested in learning more or sort of being on the mailing list of folks who receive information, feel free to sign up here. There's not a pen with it, so I'm going to give my pen, but I love my pen, so don't run off with it. Let's make that look prettier. Hang on. Yeah. There we go. Teamwork. So I'm speaking to the choir here, and I know this, but Trinity has had a long history with creation care, with sustainability, with environmental justice, with thinking about the ways that the world outside of our doors, and even in our doors, is greatly affected by our behaviors and the behaviors of others, and how we are called to be a part of that change and that shift. I know this. I've heard lots about the really good history. My best understanding as I was pulling it together is that there was this really strong push, maybe 10 years ago or so. A group of folks pulled together what was called the Sustainability Committee, doing lots of really good work, asking lots of really good questions, bringing in organizations to help us do an energy audit and things like this. But then it sort of died down, whether that was because of some pushback for political reasons, or COVID, or just ebbs and flows of staffing at Trinity. I've heard all of those things. But now I'm seeing that push come back up. So about a year ago, we had 2 or 3 different things happen. John Shepard, who's on Mission Council, came with a proposal to do more recycling at Trinity. He had done the research and made the phone calls and was ready for us to really start doing something because we weren't doing much. At the same time, Property Committee and Craig and a few others were talking about the invasive species, in particular around the ivy that's within our property. Y'all know we have this huge amount of property here. And then also Faith in Action, which is a group falling out of Mission, started to do some advocacy work. And Lucy Croswell said, hey, Lucy, is it okay, Lucy Strong, she wasn't talking about herself, is it okay if we invite the congregation and other congregations in our area to write letters to the governor's wife regarding some advocacy issues that were coming up and asking for bills to be thrown out and signed and things like this? We thought it would just sort of be a passing, sure, we'll get 10 or 15 letters. We got a basket full of letters from congregations all within our 5 to 10 mile radius. All of those things were happening at the exact same time. So your Faith in Action committee said, we're sensing some urgency here. It's time to start these conversations again. Not new. Most of y'all in this room were on the Sustainability Committee, but to really start and say it's time. We realized that maybe some shift in language would be helpful, so that language would not be as threatening or volatile. So we really landed on this creation care ministry. So somewhere over the summer, a group of folks, many of them in this room, Esther Stokes, Lucy Croswell, who couldn't be with us, Craig, John, Victoria Wally, who else am I missing? Formed what is called a creation, Lucy Croswell, a creation care committee. It is a committee where they're really focusing on not being like Mission, where we're just doing one area of work, but a committee that's very overarching and thinking about how all of our committees, all of our church, in a very holistic way, are involved in creation care. So they started these conversations. We brought in Georgia Interfaith Power and Light Do y'all know their work? Sometimes they're called GIPL. Trinity had them come out in 2014 to do an energy audit. And it was, how many of y'all were a part of that original? Yeah, a few. The energy audit came out, and they go through everything. They go attic to floor and see where we can do better. Originally, we scored, I think, a 32 out of 100. So in 2014, 32 out of 100, they gave us a list of all of these things we can do. Pretty quickly, y'all, Trinity, started to put those things into motion. Big one was light bulbs. Insulation was some of those things. All of these things that we kind of knocked out to start being better stewards within our building around energy and energy conservation. So this summer, the creation care team said, you know what, I think it's time for us to do another audit. We didn't know it had been exactly 10 years. That was just a lucky guess and sounds nice now in this presentation. But now, 10 years later, we did a second energy audit. That was in the fall. GIPL came out. The same guy who did our audit in 2014 did the 2024 one. And I'm glad to report that we did better. Not great, but better. We scored a 57. Esther's going to give us a few more points. It's still not a passing grade if we were going to be taking exams, but better. And what we learned is that we actually had leaps and bounds growth, that all of the things that were mentioned in 2014 had really been knocked off the list. Well done, Trinity, here you go. There's room to grow. The tricky part that we learned in our energy audit is that the room to grow is now larger projects, bigger infrastructure pieces. Light bulbs are easy, right? We can go do that. Some of these are now larger pieces. But we got that energy audit back, and Trinity is doing okay. When I asked, because I like grades, how we stacked up against others, a little competition never hurt anybody. My understanding is very few people get in the 90s. That really, when you have a campus our size, with what comes in and out, it's going to be really hard to get into that space. So most folks are going to hover around a 70, but they were really impressed with the growth. We're one of the first churches, nonprofits they worked with, that did a second energy audit, and they're hoping to see more of that as it comes along, but they were seeing that growth and have now asked us to sort of report back of what it was like to do the 10 years in between. So just for y'all to know, that energy audit's there, we have the research, and we're starting to think about what's next. Windows were a really big piece of that, weatherizing, a couple of other things were in there. I'll send you that energy audit if you want. It's a big, huge packet. But I share that to say that your church as a whole is starting to think about creation care. What's been great, even before Adult Ed did this class, is I'm starting to see questions come from small committees. Pastor's Aid has reached out about how they can actually be more environmentally friendly and be thinking about these pieces. So the Creation Care Ministry is now up and running at Trinity. It is not a session committee. It's falling sort of in this gray area with representatives from property, finance, mission, adult ed, faith in action, YFM, CFM, all of these places where we interact in the world and thinking about how we can do better. So today, this space is really not necessarily for y'all to learn and meet to lecture, but for us to talk about what we did learn and think about what we want for Trinity and what we want for our community. I'll take a few more minutes just to sort of say what Creation Care Ministry is doing now, really since we've really been doing the work is January 2024-25. We had the Great Adult Ed series, of course, so y'all know those happened. We had a tour of Charmed, which is the Center for Hard to Recycle Materials, and had almost 30 people join us out there. Mission Council has been awarding funds with our impact grants to some of these organizations, GIPL, Live Thrive, which is Charmed, and passing along funds there so they can continue that work. YFM and Tanner has been leading a charge to work on some river cleanup. They went on Saturday in the deluge of rain out to the Peachtree Creek.
Yeah, Greenway Park area.
Yeah. So had about 5 or 6 Trinity kids go and join about another 20 or so youth kids from the area for this cleanup. All of these things are one of the ways that Gipple is tying people together. So we've realized we have a great partner in Gipple because they can help point us in the right direction. We did have a big energy summit Gipple hosted, and we had, I'd say, 5 or 6 folks, including some of our youth, go to that summit back in February to see what other churches are doing and to learn about new things as well. So what's good is the energy's there, it's bubbling around, and it's coming. So today, let's just talk and sit and think about what it is that we've learned and where we want to go. So before we move to that section, Creation Care team, anything y'all want to add about what we've been doing or what we've been thinking about? I'm going to give you a mic just because.
Well, just another thought about Gipple, and it's always wonderful to learn how other places are doing things. And Gipple's been great in terms of being interdenominational and a resource. In that summit, the Gipple Summit was at Northside Methodist, just similar church of sorts down the road, and its origins there were from one of its members named Ray Anderson, who was a manufacturing executive who, discovered that there are ways to do manufacturing that are sustainable, and he became very passionate about it. So that was great. And one thing I did was, as part of the committee, was go to Temple Sinai, a synagogue up off Powers Ferry, kind of, again, similar kind of demographic and dynamics, and just learned a lot.
Hey, Greg, while you have the mic, could you update us on the ID eradication project?
So yeah, we are in the process of getting rid of the ivy on the campus, which had overwhelmed our woods and overwhelmed our trees. That's going to be it's a multi-year project, and the landscaping company that does our landscape maintenance anyway, and we got bids, and they are in process. So the first thing they did was weed whack it back, and which made a visual difference. It's coming back, and which they knew would happen, and there will be more to come.
I'd like to point out a point of history, because you say that it all started about 10 years or 20 years ago. I think the Great Awakening at Trinity was a series sermon when Silent Spring came out. Was it Rachel Carson? Back in those days, you didn't preach the lexicon. You just preached what you wanted. And there was a 2 or 3 part series that I think awakened many people. I can recall it's the first time I ever heard the word environmentalism. Before that, you talked about yourself person being a conservationist. And I think that we need to remember a lot of things we've done over the years. We used to have a dumpster out there that had bottles every day. It was one of my enjoyable parts of Sunday, was to come in to see what kind of whiskey my fellow parishioners were drinking. And it was a great entertainment to see that we didn't drink cheap whiskey, but we brought our bottles every Sunday, and then they'd haul that thing away. And I also need to point out that there were a couple of times where we had big trucks and we brought in computers. These were in the days before. Now you can get rid of a computer at a couple of stores, but in those days it was really hard to get rid of them. So we really have a 40 or 50 year history. Now, maybe it wasn't as directed then, but I think Trinity, over its lifetime, has been the church singularly in Atlanta that's been concerned. So I just wanted to point out that point of history.
No, that's really helpful. And I think that's one of those pieces as we move forward, even in a semi-politicized world, this is a vein that's been running through Trinity from the beginning. Advocacy, loving creation, remembering that God has called us to go out and be stewards. It says it in Genesis, so it's really an easy reminder. It's the first book we read. So thank you for that. Yes. Yes, Gipple stands for Georgia Interfaith Power and Light. They are housed over at Columbia Seminary, and so they are working with a lot of different organizations and nonprofits, primarily faith-based, but as Craig mentioned, very ecumenical and interfaith, which is sort of a fascinating thing to see, and different sizes of churches. So Temple Sinai is going to be a little bit larger complex, more like us. Oakhurst Pres is going to be a much smaller, more neighborhood church. So they're really seeing how they go up and down and working through things. A couple of other things, just as updates, since I mentioned it before we run out of time, I want to have question time, is the recycling. I mentioned that John Shepard started that. What we realized here at Trinity is that we recycle cardboard. Out in the parking lot by the Welcome Center, there's a dumpster. You can drop off your boxes there. But that inside the building, we weren't doing a great job. There's not a lot of commingled recycling happening in this space. And by not a lot, I mean there isn't any commingled recycling happening in this space. So John's proposal, which was fantastic, was to think about how we can use our space more broadly in the community. Glass, electronics, hard to recycle things, cardboard, paper, and be thinking about how to use and offer it both for Trinity, but also the community. What we realized, and this was Heather and Rebecca and I, is that we need to make sure we're recycling in-house before we start touting that we are outward. Heather and I are having great conversations with Waste Management, mostly with their phone tree system. So we call and get passed around and passed around and passed around. Waste Management is the company that we pay to take care of our dumpsters. So we're trying to figure out how to recycle on a larger level within this space and really just keep being put on hold. So we're working our way through that, and we're really hoping by the end of the summer that that is in place. We're at the point now of thinking about, do we leave Waste Management for another company that might be more helpful, and looking to talk with Charmed and Peggy Whitelaw, Peggy, about that, about how we can do a better job there. So those are some pieces we're working on. John Tyrrell's been working, there has been a CSA, right, here at Trinity. It was confusing on who was running it. So farm group was bringing in boxes, right, of fruits and vegetables and things. There was some confusion on who was in charge of it, who was running it, was anybody kind of monitoring it? Not really at Trinity. And then we come to learn that family is stepping away some, so John is thinking about how we can bring in a new group, and that's something we can open up to our congregation and community. So you'll hear more about that probably, maybe this summer, but possibly as fall kicks off. So those are just some of the little things that we've really been working on. The advocacy piece I mentioned, just so y'all know that there is also this great work happening on the state level, that we have folks going down to the Capitol, we have folks writing letters, calling their senators, calling their representatives, lobbying at, shaking hands, trying to ask questions at the Capitol, working alongside GIPL and sometimes on our own. So this work is happening in a very holistic way, which I think is great. So my question for y'all, and this really is brainstorming. This is, y'all are great minds. Y'all have been seeing this for a minute at Trinity and out in the world. So after these speakers that we had come in, what was it that surprised you? What did you learn from these speakers that you maybe didn't know before or caught you off guard, or that you want to be sure that maybe others heard as well? So take a few minutes at your tables and just be thinking about it, and then I may take some notes as we come back. So amongst your table, just think about what was it that surprised you and what you learned from the creation care adult ed classes we had.
Well, I'll be
You're Julie? Are you?
All right. Just because I want Nick to be able to hear some of this as the chair of adult education, tell us a little bit about what some of your initial reactions were to the adult ed speakers that we had on creation care, or if there's something you learned that you want to be sure you pass along to the larger group. So that first question of these creation care classes that we had, what was it that you saw or learned or enjoyed in those spaces? Nick, I hope somebody liked something. That's true. I'm gonna let you have a mic just because.
Because I'm not allowed now. I am allowed. We talked a lot about what we learned, which I think is a big thumbs up for what it was, and also the stimulus and the passing around of the notebook. I mean the clipboard for people to get involved in different ways, and so and we are talking at this table about how to bring it forward, which has always been the adult ed plan: educate and then activate. So I don't know if other tables talked about that, but.
Was there anything else that jumped out that y'all want to share as a group from those creation classes? Or are we all just in agreement that they were good and helpful? Good and helpful. Yes, Sam, I'm gonna let you grab the mic from Lastly. Thank you. Hitchens?
Yeah, I can't imagine, as one member of our table said, it's pretty hard to imagine anybody in this church, wherever they are on any number of other things, that would be against recycling and trying a little harder on environmental things. We were saying, as Lane and I mentioned, we've watched some rather disturbing documentaries on Netflix and so forth about, for instance, what total percentage of everything we actively and virtuously recycle ever actually gets recycled. And I'll say it's a disturbingly tiny percentage. And so one of the things that I was struck by was how broadly our presenters were looking at this whole thing. But I will say how extremely gentle they were in ever pressing remotely an actual realization of where we are right now. The guy from Georgia Tech had some quadrants about, we have to make some decisions as a society. Are we actually actively pressing toward a time where we're working toward everyone having at least the basics for life? Or are we, and I think he said at the time where we are now, and churches are, I guess, supporting, unless we're out marching in the streets, are we moving toward a time where we work toward ensuring more and more that at least the wealthiest and best positioned people in a given economy and culture have everything they want of the basics of life, and everybody else is on their own? And so I'm glad they looked at how momentous are the decisions, but that was probably the most explicit thing I heard in the whole of anybody everywhere. And I guess they knew, well, we come from different places, so we're certainly not going to come in and stir the pot as guest speakers, but this is big, people. And I suspect we need to have some really challenging and really loving, respectful conversations that are a lot deeper than probably most congregations have ever had, based on what the speaker said but didn't really emphasize. They just sort of flashed it by real quick.
Yeah. Anybody else want something they want to share? All right. Oh, John, you got something? I'll let you grab that mic.
I just want to say one thing. I've dealt with waste management for 20 plus years. So recycling is not a core value of theirs, and so you might as well be talking to this chair right here. But, so it's just not. But two is, I think one of the things that I think is really important we do, kind of from a lessons learned standpoint, is focus on just a handful of core things. Is it 3 to 5? Is it 1 to 3? But it's what do we think where we can have the most impact? but also thinking about it generationally. You know, the millennials and the Gen Zs are very, very skeptical about recycling for exactly, you know, the reason. You know, it's just there's a lot of greenwashing, and so anything we need to be able to trace it all the way back to make sure it's not going to some third world country as a dumping ground. But doing just a handful of things, doing it really well, it becomes part of the daily practice, and then we can consider adding more. We can't do everything. I wish we could. We just can't. But we can do a few things to make it really impactful, and we can build from there.
I think that's helpful. On that note, I want us to really turn to what can we be doing? What can we as Trinity be doing? Y'all talked some at your table, so the first question I'm curious for y'all is, where do y'all see holes or needs in what Trinity is or isn't doing in regards to conservation, environmentalism, sustainability, recycling, whatever the word is and how you describe it. But I'm going to start putting some things on the paper, actually. So you're going to have to yell real loud because they'll get mad at me for not passing a mic. So what do you got, Lane?
Well, I would love to see, even like
Pastor's Aid is working to get rid of our little plastic cups. And we also have, for our Magic Punch, it takes cans of pineapple juice and plastic bottles of ginger ale, and those never get recycled. There's no place here, and to get them, we would take them home with us, but would take washing and washing and washing. So we have to come up with a system. If there were a system that we could leave those cans and bottles here, but there's no, I don't think they recycle those here either. So we're working on that.
That's helpful. Jim, I saw you in the back.
Solar panels.
Solar panels. All right. So solar panels is a conversation that's happened before at Trinity, and may be happening again soon as we start to think about it and working with Georgia Interfaith Power and Light as a good partner who can help us walk through that in ways that are smarter. Solar is interesting because solar has shifted pretty dramatically, even over the last 5 years, but as technology increases. So thanks for that, Jim. What else we got? Mac.
The politics of this issue is that when we have this wonderful class, people who are climate deniers don't come to it. So recognizing that, but unfortunately, the issue got politicized years ago. I mean, we all grew up Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, and we loved to take care of the environment, and all of a sudden, it became it never was a political issue. So I think we need to have preaching on the subject. Mark Douglas needs to be in the pulpit talking about it so that people will be jarred out of their laissez-faire attitude toward creation care. And I mean, I just don't think we hear it preached enough, quite honestly. And I'm talking about outsiders who are really zingers as opposed to members of the staff.
Yeah, that's helpful. Who else we got? Lynn, I saw your hand.
I was just going to say that Druid Hills Presbyterian installed solar panels in the last 2 years.
Perfect. So as we start having those conversations, we would definitely look and talk to others before we got there. So that's a helpful partner. John.
This is a longer-term project because it's going to take a lot of thought and planning, is to be North Atlanta charm drop-off maybe twice a month, because you've got to staff it, but it's part of that is to have, instead of a fee for, say, dropping off a TV, it's to contribute what you can. So if somebody's young and just getting started, you know, they can, or maybe they've decided to, they've been called to the ministry and they don't have a lot of spare change hanging around.
What's that
they can
like?
still drop off,
Yeah.
you know, their TV or their computer. But we would need to capitalize that and fund it. But we could certainly do that.
I think that's
And
helpful.
we got plenty of space.
Yeah, John, lastly.
Well, Lizzie, Petrie Press had that for a while, and so did Second Ponce. So I don't know why they stopped. That'd be a good question to ask.
So
I
they were,
think Peachtree Prez was.
they were, when we were at Charm, we talked a little bit about it with Peggy. They stopped during COVID and for other reasons, and they're realizing it's not as advantageous. So I think it's a new conversation to start back up now that we're further outside of COVID and other things. We have a few minutes. I just saw some ushers poke their head out and tell me we were being loud. So tell me what else we got. What other things?
Again, from my temple Sinai visit, one of the things they do is that all of their plates and utensils are compostable. So you're not having to worry about, is it actually getting recycled? They have been really thoughtful about the way they've done things. That they also have solar. So again, a good template.
That's helpful.
I don't know the answer to that.
I think they have an organization that comes in. There's a couple of other ones we've learned about as well, where essentially, like waste management, there's someone who comes and takes away your compost. So they're giving to, I think that's the one that does that. Yep. Correct. It's going to a bigger organization that can then compost on a larger level. So they don't have to think about, yeah.
Compost a lot more because they can.
Exactly. Esther.
We didn't actually talk about this at our table, but I meant to. We have this huge property, and we have a lot of spaces in the parking lots that are lawn, and we could be creating spaces that contribute to the ecosystem more than the lawn. So we could create meadow places in these islands in the back where we welcome insects and birds and contribute to the health of the ecosystem.
That's helpful. One of the things y'all will notice is I will never be a teacher because I do not have teacher handwriting on boards. All right, Sam, what do you got?
There's always an opportunity in churches for virtue signaling, where we say, oh, we all need to do on the environment, and fortunately, we have like a little group of 25 people that are doing that for us. So my thing was, could we include some kind of a thing like creation care family certification or something like that? How many families do we have at Trinity approximately?
600.
600. So rather than a few people enthusiastically leaning into circumstances that affect a few things, is there a way we can empower and certify, if we aimed for 300 families, to choose at least 4 things off a list of ways they could live into creation care?
Yeah, that's a helpful one.
Exactly. How do we empower individual families to lean into this and not just take satisfaction that, well, our church does some stuff like that?
Well, and I think one of the things that's really interesting, Sam, is of those 300 or 600 families, how many are actually doing some of this work already? And we just don't talk about. I think that John mentioned that Alan is already actively registered. You work with a composting group that come to your place, they take your compost and go away. So I think there are some that are doing that, that you can, but if people don't know that they can buy into this system, this organization that is composting for a small fee, then they could do that. Alan.
Yeah, I do compost, and they take pretty much everything that's organic. And the other thing I wanted to ask was, how much impact would it have if we had people bring their own silverware and plates to church meal functions, and even on Sunday mornings for coffee, bring their own mugs if they're members and in the know? Would that have an impact? Would people be interested? Maybe that's a question to ask.
I bet the mugs one would be much easier to implement than the utensils here, but that is interesting. We are coming on to the time that I have to go because of a baptism, but I want to do 2 things, then I want to hear what Betty has to say. One is that in the Friday email this week, and then in the following week, you will see a survey that your Creation Care ministry team has put together, because we're really, to what John's point earlier, we want to figure out where Trinity wants to focus. We cannot take on the whole elephant. We can only do bite by bite. So these conversations are helpful. Some of these things are easy, that could be implemented within 2 weeks. Some are harder, some are things we have to work our way through. But I hope that you will take the survey. It's pretty easy. You can do it while you're watching TV. And then I hope that you'll actually ask your friends who aren't in this space. Y'all are the ones who are knowledgeable, who I know are already doing this work, and I know the direction y'all want to go. But invite others just to say, here's what I think. Here's where I'd like to see Trinity moving. So that creation care piece. So be on the lookout. It's in your Friday email. If you don't get the Friday email, come find me. Coming Friday, after this. It'll be in there for a few weeks. You'll see a link. It's really easy. Just click through it. Betty, what do you have?
May I?
Yes.
Sometimes we hear too much or feel too much. It's hard. It's sad. It gets depressing. I have a book for you. This is a young Scottish woman, Mac. She's your sister's age, maybe. She's 29 when she wrote this book. Her name is Hannah Ritchie.
Our first speaker raved about this book.
Okay, all right, so you've already seen it. I'm reading it now. It's nonfiction. There's very few graphs. It reads easily. It'll lift your heart. There's some good news on every page, so I highly recommend it. Oh, the Ritchie. I was trying to sound Scottish.
I'll tell you that Tom Farmer has said the same thing.
Yes.
Staff is reading it, is starting to read it as well.
It's a wonderful book. Not the title. The title is Not the End of the World.
I'm done. Y'all keep going.
Ritchie. Hannah. Not the End of the World. It's real easy to read, and it's very uplifting, and she's a darling girl. Go for it.
Yes. Oh, I think we should read it as a congregation.
That's a good idea. Back at the old Sustainability Committee had an Earth Day celebration, and that's something we could think about doing in the future.
You know, I've been working on
Yeah, because I was ready to go off in church.